Milktooth. If Aster Crown was incongruent due to incompetence, Milktooth seems almost deliberately bad. You might look at the weaponry and say, how is an AC with the spread bazooka, flamethrower and chainsaw not contending for top tier? Well, this arsenal is counter-synergetic with itself in ways I didn't even realize were possible until I tried this AC. The flamethrower is an alright weapon, dealing a good amount of damage at short range, but almost no impact whatsoever. The spread bazooka is a solid weapon as well. So what's the catch? The chainsaw is unwieldy, but has some of the strongest attacks in the game. The uncharged moves involve slowly swiping it sideways, dealing a good amount of damage. However, this attack is sluggish and doesn't stunlock the enemy, so it's not going to let you do much against all but the slowest targets to recover. The charged attack is much better, as it thrusts the blade inside of the enemy and stunlocks them while turning their steel core into confetti. It would be a top tier punish, but there's some problems. You see, the spread bazooka is your best tool for building stagger. Unfortunately, the impact decays by a lot. More importantly though, there's a significant delay after firing before you're allowed to do anything. So if the bazooka staggers the enemy, there's a short delay before you can start charging up the secondary attack on the chainsaw, then there's another short delay before the attack is ready, and then there's still the thrust itself being slow as hell. As a result, almost all enemies in the game will recover before they can be stunlocked again. The reason why Nightfall and Locksmith have an assault rifle in their right arm is because this lets you finish staggering your enemy while preserving your mobility. The Pile Bunker and Laser Blade have a significant delay on their charged moves, but anticipating the appearance of your precious opening lets you minimize the delay until your melee punisher takes over. Milktooth does not have such a tool, as the flamethrower does next to no impact. The final weapon is this dual split missile launcher. It's a different model than the one Michigan has got, and this one is awful at hitting anything. I don't know why, but it just completely misses more than it hits anything. It's not a reliable tool, and it almost might as well not exist. It's not good enough to fulfill this role of a semi-passive stagger buildup. As a result, we have a really good Punisher weapon, which could be devastating. However, the arsenal just doesn't facilitate its use. The situation is so bad, in fact, that I sometimes find myself using the charged chainsaw attack in order to catch an unstaggered enemy to stagger them in the first place, and then using the spread bazooka to punish. Somehow, this ends up being easier than the inverse. And you know what's really fucking funny? The chainsaw is one of the only melee weapons in the game which lets you charge an attack and buffer it without forcing your AC into stance, but this is cancelled out by firing the spread bazooka. This set of weapons would have been so fucking good if only the right hand had some assault rifle or shotgun. Alright, that's enough negativity for the day. Let's take a look at the internals. The booster specs are... What do I even say about this? These bars speak for themselves. At least the frame is quite sturdy, but with this mobility, the health still wears down really quickly. The expansion is assault armor, which is not great. It's still a bit too slow to come online after a bazooka shot to be a reliable punish. The generator is not terrible, but with the slow movement speed, you're gonna be expending a lot of energy to get anywhere. And the FCS is... Oh my god, let's just move on, please. Steel Haze. As soon as I entered a mission with this AC, I already knew it was easily going to be S tier. The way it moves alone is leagues above anything else in this game. It's by far the most nimble and lightweight preset. And just look at how fast it is. Holy shit, you're basically teleporting around! This is mostly thanks to the Alula booster, allowing this machine to dart around like a terrier on cocaine. The two main weapons are the kinetic burst rifle and burst pistol. They're fine weapons, and you can use them simultaneously for some really good stagger buildup. However, I'd have swapped one of the weapons to be more similar to the other one, because you still have to get close to use them both effectively. In that case, you're not taking advantage of the range on the Ransetsu. Two pistols, shotguns or light machine guns would do the trick, as the mobility on this AC lets you control the range and rules of engagement. And to take advantage of the punish window, the laser slicer returns. This weapon actually has a charged attack I haven't mentioned, because it's kind of underwhelming. This goes for many of the charged attacks on melee weapons which can strike several times. Let's take the Pulse Blade for example. You can either perform 2 light attacks in succession or 1 stronger swipe. If the charged attack were to match the damage of the light combo, it would have to deal at least twice the damage of 1 light attack, which it doesn't. There's some benefits though. For example, it doesn't expose you for as long. Still, usually you want to do as much damage as you can during a stagger. The final weapon is this triple cell plasma missile launcher. I've complained about the plasma rifle in Institute, but I think the missile form works better. If we were to compare them to more kinetic alternatives, this launcher has the advantage that multi-locking onto several MTs will still take out a large group. And even if you don't, the AoE is still often good enough. They also reload and lock on faster. The reason why they work better as missiles is because the back-mounted weapons tend to be less practical than the handheld ones. So you're facing competition from Scooters, Vientos, Zimmermans, and the like, which is a tough ask. Counterintuitively, this 3-cell variant is better than the 6-cell alternative. This is because as long as the enemy is within the AoE of at least 1 bubble, the damage stays the same. Ergo, more missiles does not increase the damage. The only real benefit is the larger area coverage, but the smaller model has a shorter reload and lock-on time. Steel Haze lacks the synergy with the Huxley and Needle launcher, but it has another trick up its sleeve. Assault armor can be freely used at the end of a laser slicer combo to further compound the damage, as the residual stun is long enough to facilitate this. The other internals include this generator with decent specs, and the FCS is specialized for mid-range, which isn't really what I would have picked. The frame is exceptionally lightweight, and the arms boast the highest firearm spec in the game, along with one of the lowest melee specs in the game. I never really have trouble locking onto enemies when firing my kinetic guns, so I guess it's a good sign. The total AP comes out at around 6k, which is puny. However, that's par for the course for lightweight builds. This might seem like a bunch of shortcomings, and it is. So why is this AC S tier? Well, first of all, no matter what parts you pick, there's always going to be weaker aspects. Secondly, and more importantly, even the best preset builds in this game are about on par with what could be expected of a competent player to have built. They just aren't as good as the cream of the crop of what is possible if you can freely mix and match every part. The truth is that when I sorted in this AC, its mobility and feel completely blew out of the water all the other presets I've tried before, and still nothing has matched it. While the weaponry isn't as devastating as that of Umber Ox, it still hits really hard, if you know how to use it well. This is why I'm happy to say Steel Haze is our first S tier preset. Only took us... how many episodes? Oh my god, Deadsled. Well, here's another fairly confused AC that doesn't know what it wants to be. However, it lands closer to Trainer on the practicality scale than Aster Crown. There are 2 handheld laser weapons on this one, the first of which is this rifle. It fires slowly but deals good damage, the projectile travels quickly and has a very powerful charged attack, which takes so long to reach that stage that whatever window of opportunity you thought you had will be gone before you're done. The second one is this shotgun with low range, but good damage. The charged attack on this weapon is a single blast with an even shorter range. It's far faster to charge up, deals a very good amount of damage and knocks your target back. I'm not sure if that's a good thing, but it certainly feels satisfying. The first back-mounted weapon is the classic 4-cell missile launcher along with the single-cell active homing rocket. I think I would have picked the double variant because using these projectiles is such a crapshoot as to if they'll hit anything, that being able to roll more dice at once is your best bet at increasing the damage. I think the gimmick of this AC setup is to use the active homing missile as a distraction and then unload with the remaining 3 weapons, all of which are very easy to hit with. However, no gimmick will save you if you cannot output the damage necessary to kill your enemies. The shotgun's charged attack is a great punisher, but having to charge it up in the first place robs you of one weapon to get that stagger bar over the finish line. As a result, what's left for you is basically just try to unload and keep that pressure on your foes. The damage output is good, and you will occasionally get some staggers in, and you might be in a position for a punish. The mech is alright, but I can't really tell what it wants to be. It's a relatively heavyweight frame with the spring chicken reverse joints. I don't think that's what I would have picked, because the shotgun needs you to be really close to your enemy, and the active missile launcher doesn't like you firing it down at an enemy because, well... The generator is the Ming Tang, and it's decent, but I really would have picked one with a better energy firearm spec, because this one is crap. The FCS is the Talbot, which is an all-round good FCS, and I never have trouble targeting things. The booster specs are also really decent. I don't really know what to do with that assault armor though, because the weapons are good enough that I never find myself thinking, yes, let me stop firing all my guns for a few seconds to trigger this blast. Overall, I don't really know how to summarize this AC. It's just pretty decent, it doesn't have any major weaknesses, and just feels quite mundane. The damage output is better than Trainer, so I have to put it a bit higher. Full course. I'm gonna be completely upfront with my bias for this AC. I love it. It's among my favorites just due to how fun it is to use. Why is that? It's a gimmick build, and that gimmick is... LODS of MSASL. What's the spell? Loadsamissiles, probably. All 4 weapons fire huge salvos of missiles. The soups especially fire hails upon hails of unrelenting stagger buildup. And holy shit, just look at them go! These are easily my favorite missile launches in the game. The projectiles aren't very fast, but you fire 10 of them at once. They can home very well, and the delay between salvos is not as huge as you might expect. The biggest downside is the huge EN consumption, which puts this weapon out of league for most builds. However, this isn't a problem out in the actual field. They're also unique amongst missile launchers, in that one salvo doesn't empty the entire magazine. You can actually fire 3 salvos of 10 rockets each, before requiring a reload. And we've got 2 of them. That makes me a very happy boy, who isn't going to become a slut for someone offering them 2 soups. I know I would, I'm a slut for Carla. And the 2 handheld missile launchers are a special type. As they fire, the missiles actually stay stationary for a second or 2 before launching themselves at the target. The description says it lets you surround your enemy single-handedly, but I don't think that's how it pans out. This would be the case if the missiles all started movement simultaneously, which would make avoiding a salvo from an entire arc's width tricky. However, they do not. The delay until launch is the same for all of the missiles. As a result, it's not really that different from firing them normally. The only real benefits to this mechanism I can think of is that some enemies with armor or shields on their front will turn around to face you, which might let the missiles strike them from the back due to the delay. But that's a really niche scenario. This arsenal is extremely strong and easy to use. The stagger bar fills it up like it's going out of style. We don't have a dedicated punish weapon, but do we really need one? I mean, just look at all those missiles, how can you say no to that? The frame is a unique set designed by and for Carla specifically. It boasts great AP and stability, but is very heavy, and the booster is the Kikaku again, which doesn't do it any favors. This results in an open faith tier mobility, and that's actually a pretty big problem for this AC. The soups especially excel at medium to long range, because they have trouble turning fast enough to track enemies close up. As a result, you don't have much control over the rules of engagement. I was fighting Gun 6 Red in the arena, and despite being an average biped of average mobility, he was running circles around me. He could do what he wanted with me, and I felt like that eponymous main dish on his fork. I was constantly trying to get farther away from him, and he just wouldn't let me. I don't think he's specifically programmed to take advantage of these traits, but you will occasionally be stuck in such situations. I don't really see why this mech had to be so heavy. The generator is not great, but I only found 2 other generators which would both satisfy the N and the weight constraints, both of which seem worse than what we've got. The FCS is all about missile lock correction time, as it should. Carla knows her fucking shit when it comes to designing ACs. At least that's if Circus was at her work, because... well, we'll get to that. Assault armor is there to help you punish if you happen to be close during a stagger. Besides the mobility, the other downside of this AC is the lack of multi-lock. Each of these missile weapons can only lock on to one target, so taking out groups of MTs will result in a lot of missiles and time going to waste. Assault armor can help mitigate this, but you can only use it 3 times, and there's a sizable delay. If this list was purely ranking how much I enjoy using these ACs, full course would easily be top tier. However, I can't deny it's got some big problems, limiting its practicality. That being said, this machine is so extremely easy to use. You don't really have to worry about movement, aiming, timing your shots, or what have you. You just fire salvo after salvo and oops, I just staggered another enemy. It's so incredibly funny and gimmicky that it holds a special place in my heart. Barren Flower. Are you yet sick and tired of trying to figure out what the author had in mind? Well, so am I. Not just because I don't like literature classes, but also because we've got another weird conglomerate of parts masquerading as an AC. The head is sturdy for its weight, the core is the same Schneider piece from fucking Steel Haze, the arms are the heavyweight behemoths from Open Faith, and the legs are the boring and bad midweight tetrapods. What are we getting at here? Why does this exist? At least the attitude stability is quite high. But the AP count is similar to the far more nimble trainer. The booster has decent specs all around, but the machine has subpar mobility due to the legs. The FCS is lacking, and I did find myself noticing the reticle struggling to keep up with my enemy's movements as I was playing. Pulse armor is our expansion here, which isn't a great choice. It's not bad either. I don't know what I would have picked here, to be honest. I don't find myself struggling with the generator's performance, but it's a good thing the energy firearm spec is high, because there's 2 of those on this AC. The primary gun is Tyransetsu. Again, it's good, but it will not carry you throughout the harder battles. We've also got this plasma rifle, which I think is superior to the Nebula. This is not just due to its pretty decent damage, but I prefer the charged shot on this one. It fires out 3 projectiles with spread, each of which will produce its own empowered AoE. These 2 weapons have some nice synergy with the tetrapod, as the charged shots can be taken without ceasing of movement. Being high above your enemy also allows the charged plasma rifle attack to spread out the AoEs, covering a really impressive area. The first back-mounted weapon are the vertical plasma missiles. I'm not a fan of those, mostly due to how long the projectiles take to hit anything. However, as mentioned previously, I'd kind of rather just have the 3 cell for its faster reload and lock-on. 5 cells feels like too much, especially since it doesn't increase the damage on a single target. And the final unit is this container missile thing. It is bad. It fires out this one big slow missile, which scatters a bunch of small projectiles as it flies. The ammo capacity is low, it takes forever to reload, and just doesn't output enough damage or impact for how rarely you get to fire it. I suppose the purpose of this weapon, given that it doesn't require a lock-on, is that you fire it blindly into the air, hoping it will help during a fight with multiple enemies. However, I would rather not do that. I would rather focus down my enemies one by one, because reducing their numbers greatly helps out during a battle. So the 2 weapons are okay at dealing stagger, but what's the punish? I tried playing around with the charged attacks, and they're fine. The plasma rifle deals good damage just through its area coverage alone, but honestly, the good old unload with everything you have is probably your best bet. I am really struggling to figure out how I'm meant to be using this, because it feels like there is some hidden synergy or gimmick here that I'm missing, but I just can't figure it out. The weaponry is alright, but will not shake your world, and if the mobility is going to be this low, we might as well lean a bit into the heavyweight grind set and put some more boom on this thing.